Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone that's joined us today for this Counter Summit for Democracy. We're extremely glad you're able to be here. My name is Carlos Martinez. I'm a co-editor of Friends of Socialist China and one of the organizers of this event. We got tons of amazing speakers to hear from today, so I'm going to avoid going on for too long. I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the organizers as to why we've put today's event together. As you know, it's a counter summit. That is, it's a response to Joe Biden's so-called Summit for Democracy, which has just taken place and which was, needless to say, a complete flop. But it's important that people understand what the US is trying to do with this whole narrative of democracies versus autocracies. It's very closely tied in with the new Cold War project, with the project of consolidating and expanding a US-led imperialist system, a system in which the US and its allies are able to exercise their hegemony, their domination over the world's resources, the world's people, the world's labor, its land, its markets. There's nothing democratic about preserving that domination. Actually, it's profoundly anti-democratic. What the rest of the world wants is multipolarity. What the rest of the world wants is multilateralism, respect for the principles of the United Nations Charter. The rest of the world wants peaceful coexistence, non-interference, respect for sovereignty. We want cooperation, exchanges. We want mutual learning. We want multiple streams flowing into a river of progress, peace, and prosperity. We want to work together to prevent climate breakdown. We want to work together to prevent the possibility of nuclear war, to prevent future pandemics, to end poverty. Ask ordinary people anywhere in the world whether they want peaceful coexistence or whether they want the continuation of the US-led imperialist system with its wars, its sanctions, its coups, its destabilization, its coercion, its military bases, its military-industrial complex. They'll tell you that they want the former. Respecting democracy means respecting their wishes. It means accepting and adapting to a new world of multipolarity and multilateralism. And which are the governments calling most loudly for multipolarity? It's precisely the ones that are labeled as authoritarian. It's precisely the ones that aren't invited to Biden's summit. It's China, it's Russia, it's Iran, it's Cuba, it's Venezuela, it's the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Vietnam, Zimbabwe, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Syria. And we're very grateful and very honored that several of those countries are represented here today. The great Argentinian Cuban revolutionary Che Guevara once said, "We should not allow the word democracy to be utilized to represent the dictatorship of the exploiting classes." And that sentiment is a big part of the reason for organizing today's event. When Biden talks about democracy, what he's talking about is the model of capitalist democracy prevailing in the US, in Britain, in Canada, Australia, and Western Europe. In short, it's the political model that's prevalent in the wealthy imperialist countries. Just how democratic are these countries? Just how democratic is the United States? Karl Marx described capitalist democracy very well around 150 years ago, saying the oppressed are allowed once every few years to decide which particular representatives of the oppressing class shall represent and repress them in parliament. Doesn't that sum up our Western democracies pretty much perfectly? As you know, next year is an election year in the US. Voters will be able to choose whether a Democrat or a Republican will hold the top office in a system built on exploitation and oppression, a system so aptly described by bell hooks as imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. What voters won't be able to do is choose a government that will pursue peace, that will make really meaningful progress on tackling climate change, that will build a comprehensive social insurance system with free universal healthcare and education, that will dismantle the US's 800 overseas military bases, that will stop trying to roll back Chinese socialism, that will stop trying to weaken and dismember Russia, that Americans live several times less than their Euro-American counterparts and are several times more likely to suffer modern-day slavery via the system of mass incarceration. None of those things is on the table in next year's presidential elections. And that fact calls to mind Xi Jinping's comment a couple of years ago that if the people are awakened only at voting time and dormant afterward, if the people hear big slogans during elections but have no say after, if the people are favored during canvassing but are left out after elections, this is not true democracy. The fact of the matter is that the US is far more plutocratic than democratic, and Joe Biden is in no position to define which countries are democracies and which are autocracies. The whole project is part of a propaganda war, and the propaganda war is a form of war propaganda. NATO is waging a proxy war against Russia as we speak. This war would never have happened and could have been ended at any point if the US wasn't intent on weakening, undermining, and dividing Russia. The imperialist powers are simultaneously gearing up for war against China via AUKUS, via their provocations in the South China Sea, via their provocations in relation to Taiwan province, and so on. These same powers are relentless in their attacks on Cuba, on Iran, on North Korea, on Nicaragua, on Venezuela. It's our responsibility to oppose their wars and to expose their propaganda. And hence, we're holding this event, and we're very grateful to everybody that's joined us today, and to all the countries, all the political organizations, all the movements and individuals around the world that are participating in this crucial work of promoting peace and promoting true democracy.